So here's what went down on the show today, and I've got to tell you, it sparked a ton of debate. The main topic was Walker Kessler, and the fact that the Utah Jazz have decided not to extend him. That right there sent waves through the league, because once a team makes that decision, it usually means two things. Either they're preparing to move on, or they're trying to drum up the best possible value before pulling the trigger on a trade. And when Kessler's name came up, naturally, the Lakers were mentioned, because, let's be real, Los Angeles has been circling around this guy for a while now. From what was said on the program, the closest the Lakers ever came to landing him was last off-season. They actually had a real shot, but here's the kicker. They didn't want to pay the price. The front office looked at what Utah was asking, and they just weren't willing to meet those demands. So fast forward to now, and you're left wondering, did they miss their chance? Or are they just being patient, waiting for the right moment to make their move? Because here's the thing, and the panel really stressed this. If the Lakers were to land Walker Kessler, it's probably going to happen in the off-season, not during the middle of the year. Why? Because as of now, they're strapped. They don't have the draft capital they'd need, and they don't have the kind of financial flexibility to absorb him. The suggestion was that the Lakers should take a wait-and-see approach. Focus first on DeAndre Ayton, see if he can mesh with Luka, see if he can anchor that front court and give them what they need. Because if Ayton clicks, then suddenly the urgency to bring in Kessler just isn't there anymore. Now, of course, the conversation shifted to the bigger picture, and it was pointed out that next offseason is when the Lakers would really have the leverage to strike. They'd have more assets available, possibly 3 first-round picks, multiple swaps, and some expiring deals they could use to balance salary. That opens up the door to something Utah might actually entertain. They could send Kessler out without having to take back money they don't want. That's when it becomes realistic. But the question then becomes, what do the Lakers really need more? Another big or a reliable 3-and-D wing? And that's where it gets tricky. Because you can make the case for a 2-big lineup, sure, but when you start adding up the dollars, you run into problems. Think about it. If Ayton works out, you're paying him somewhere in the $25 million range. Then you've got Kessler, who's due for a big payday himself, likely $18 to $20 million. That's over $40 million tied up in just your front court, and in today's NBA, with the way rosters have to be built, that's a tough pill to swallow. And yet, the real shocker came when the panel broke down what Utah reportedly wants in return. The Jazz's asking price? Austin Reeves, and 2 first-round picks. Let that sink in for a second. To get Walker Kessler, the Lakers would have to part ways with one of their most important players, plus multiple future assets. The reaction in the studio was disbelief. I mean, the consensus was clear. That price is outrageous. Reeves alone, in the right market, could probably net you 2 first-rounders. So, to package him with additional picks just to get Kessler? That's a hard no. Now, don't get me wrong. Kessler fits the mold of what you'd want next to Luka and LeBron. He's a lob threat, he's an elite rim protector, he brings size, energy, and a defensive presence. But at that price, you're talking about mortgaging too much of your future. And that's where the debate really heated up. Is Kessler worth pushing all those chips into the middle of the table? Or are the Lakers smarter to wait for a more balanced move? That's the tone the show had today. A lot of admiration for Kessler's game, but also a lot of caution about overpaying just to chase him now. And that, in a nutshell, was the first big takeaway. Utah's asking price is sky high, and unless something changes, it feels like this saga is far from over. Now, the conversation didn't stop there. On the show, the panel dug even deeper into the idea of what Kessler and Lauri Markkanen could look like together in Los Angeles. And let me tell you, this really got people thinking. Because here's the truth. Nobody's pretending that either one of them is a clear-cut number 1 option. They're not in that tier. But if Luka is as good as many people believe he is, then maybe, just maybe, you don't need a traditional number 2. We've seen this play out before across the league. The example that came up was Denver. For years, the debate was whether Jamal Murray could really be the second option next to Nikola Jokic. Was he truly that guy? And for a long time, the answer leaned toward no, until the right pieces were brought in. Once Aaron Gordon arrived, suddenly the puzzle fit together. Murray didn't have to be the definitive number 2 every single night. He could thrive in that in-between space, and on any given night, he could step up as the second guy. The same logic applied when Milwaukee brought in Drew Holiday to support Giannis and Chris Middleton. 2 players who might have been best suited as third options suddenly worked because the team adjusted the structure around them. That's the type of thinking being applied to a potential Lakers scenario with Markkanen and Kessler. If you can surround Luka with the right kind of depth, then the pressure isn't on one guy to be the savior. You build layers of support. But here's where the complications come in. And this was a major point on the show. To actually pull this off, to bring in both Markkanen and Kessler, the Lakers would have to gut their roster. You're talking about moving multiple rotation players, possibly Rui, maybe Max, Gabe Vincent, Dalton Knecht. The list goes on. On top of that, you'd almost certainly need to loop in a third team just to balance out the contracts and make it work. And then there's the Austin Reeves fact. Utah already has a group of young guards they're developing, so even if they like Reeves as a player, it doesn't necessarily make sense for them to invest in someone who doesn't fit their current timeline. That sparked the idea that maybe a third team would be needed, one that actually wants Reeves, and in exchange, you'd bring back the type of assets or young prospects Utah would prefer. That way, the Jazz get value, the Lakers get their size, and the deal doesn't die on the table. Another layer that was highlighted is Markkanen's contract. Right now, he's being paid like a first or second option, and that number is tough to swallow unless you're convinced he can be your long-term fit. The argument was made that just to move off his deal, Utah would probably have to attach sweeteners, maybe even draft pick, and if the Lakers are the team willing to take that on, they'd be doing the Jazz a huge favor, which, in turn, could be used as leverage to pry Kessler away in the same deal. Now, imagine for a second that it actually happens. Picture that front court. DeAndre Ayton at the 5, Kessler as the defensive anchor, and Markkanen at the 3 or the 4, depending on the lineup. That's a wall of size and versatility. You'd have 7-footers across positions 3 through 5, with Luka orchestrating everything on the perimeter. When LeBron eventually steps away, Markkanen slides naturally into the 4, Kessler and Ayton man the paint, and suddenly you've got a new core that's built to last. And it doesn't stop there. The discussion also touched on flexibility. If Ayton works out, perfect. You've got option. If he doesn't, you let him walk, keep Kessler and Markkanen, and reshape the supporting cast. Either way, the Lakers would be in position to stay competitive. And with wings or guards like Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia, or even Bronny developing into rotation roles, the Lakers could roll out lineups where the smallest player on the court is Luka at 6'7". Think about that. A massive, switchable, multi-positional team that can go small ball with Markkanen at the 5 or go jumbo with Kessler and Ayton patrolling the interior. That was the vision painted on the show. Big, versatile, overwhelming lineups designed to match up with anyone in the league. But again, the big question is cost. Do you gut your roster and sacrifice depth to make this happen? Or do you hold steady, let Ayton prove himself, and then reassess next offseason when more options are on the table? That was the tension in the room, balancing the dream scenario with the cold reality of the price tag. Luka is kind of the one tying everything together, and in theory, that could be a perfect combination. But if the Lakers had to give up Austin Reeves and multiple first-round picks just to land Walker Kessler, even if they were desperate for a center, I don't think I'd do it. And this is coming from someone who doesn't mind overpaying when it makes sense. Take Mark Williams, for example. Yes, it was a bit of an overpay, but it worked. With Kessler, though, as much as I like him, the price feels way too steep. Don't get me wrong, Walker is terrific. Defensively, as a lob threat, he'd be an ideal fit next to Luka Doncic. But unless the Lakers are literally one Walker Kessler away from being a championship team, it just doesn't sus. At that price point, you're almost better off targeting a different path. For the same cost, you could go out and get an Andrew Wiggins and then use Austin Reeves to chase a younger two-way 3-and-D guard. That combination might elevate the Lakers more than adding just Kessler would. And I say this as someone who has been one of Kessler's biggest supporters over the past few years. Still, if DeAndre Ayton pans out, the need for Kessler drops significantly. Sure, Kessler is clearly superior on defense, but right now Ayton is the better all-around center. Kessler would definitely help anchor the defense. But again, if you can instead bring in Wiggins and maybe someone like Herb Jones, that gives you more balance. Think about it. You could likely land both players for the cost of Reeves and multiple firsts. Trade Reeves in one deal to bring back Herb Jones, and then package Rui and Dalton Knecht, or some combination like that, to get Wiggins. Suddenly, you're rolling out Luka Doncic, Andrew Wiggins, Herb Jones, LeBron James, and DeAndre Ayton. At that point, you might be the best team in basketball, with the only real concern being health. That's a much stronger outcome than giving up the same price tag just for Kessler. The reality is the asking price is outrageous, but that's classic Danny Ainge. This is exactly how he operates. He always starts by asking for the moon, then slowly works his way down. We saw it in the Russell Westbrook situation. Utah's initial demand was 2 unprotected first-rounders for Rudy Gay, Mike Conley, and Malik Beasley in return. As training camp drew closer, the price softened. First, it became 1 unprotected and 1 protected, then eventually both protected. The Lakers stood firm, passed on the Buddy Hield and Miles Turner deal, and when the deadline came, they landed Jared Vanderbilt, D'Angelo Russell instead of Conley. In hindsight, Conley might have been the better fit. And Malik Beasley, all while only giving up 1 protected first. That's Ainge 101. He'll drop his demands eventually. But even if Utah came down to something like Reeves and 1 first, I'm not sure that's the smartest allocation of assets, especially if Ayton proves to be a reliable piece. If Ayton is a complete bust, then maybe the Lakers revisit it. To me, though, that feels more like a next-season move. You could look at a double sign-and-trade scenario at that point, since Utah won't be anywhere near the cap or apron. At the end of the day, it's about timing and value. Trading so much for Kessler right now doesn't make the most sense. Not when there are better ways to build out the roster. As always, though, this is just my perspective. I'll throw it back to you. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this discussion, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.